Good morning for those of you on the West Coast, and good day, good afternoon for those of you perhaps in the Central Time Zones and the Eastern Time Zones. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is a part of our ongoing K-12 Tech Survival Guide series. And my name is David. I'm here with ManagedMethods, and I'll be introducing our group of panelists here momentarily. Since it is just getting started, I'm going to go ahead and just pause for 30 seconds or so to allow attendees to be able to log in and join, and then we'll get underway. Again, this is the K-12 Tech Survival Guide webinar series. Today's topic is tips for developing and improving your district's incident response plan. And, you know, we may stray off topic a little bit, but it's all going to be involved with cybersecurity. And again, this webinar series is presented by ManagedMethods, and my name is David Waugh. I am part of the Sales and Customer Success organization here at ManagedMethods. So we'll get going momentarily here. Let me take a sip of coffee, and I see, okay, more folks are rolling in. All righty. Well, again, good morning if you're on the West Coast, late morning, almost lunchtime. It is 12 o'clock noon here in the Rocky Mountain state of Colorado, and we'll say good afternoon to those of you in the Central and Eastern time zones. We'll go ahead and get moving. So, Katie, if you want to just bounce the slide deck forward, we'll go ahead and jump with that. Just a couple housekeeping items. If you've attended these things before, you understand the drill. We basically are recording today's webinar, so all panelists, you are muted. But if you want to ask questions, feel free to put those questions into the chat. And we'll be addressing those as we go on and towards the end for Q&A session. But yes, the webinar is being recorded, and everyone who has registered and attended this webinar today will receive a copy of the recording. Being that it's a Friday, it'll be sometime early next week. Usually takes about 24 to 48 hours for Zoom to process the transcripts and the recording, so bear with us. We'll get that out to you as soon as possible. With that said, okay, let's go ahead and jump forward here. So today's agenda, pretty straightforward. We're going to discuss, first and foremost, how a cloud audit can help you prepare for your incident response plan. It's a little bit of the housekeeping, kind of, you can't control what you don't know about. So if you can have insights as to the who, what, when, where, why, when it comes to your district's technology stack, where data is stored, who has access, who's supposed to have access, etc., then you can be a little bit more prepared when you begin to build your response plans. Then I will have our panelists here join in, and we'll go through that. Excited today, have three district technology leaders who are going to share their insights on this topic, and then we'll open it up to you, our audience members, to ask some questions of these esteemed panelists. So, how a cloud audit helps. So I guess let's just kind of set the stage first and foremost. I just came back from a conference in Texas where the last 2 days this has been a big topic, talking about various types of audits, everything from your technology perimeter to the content that's stored within your technology stack. So to first set the stage, one of the core beliefs we have here at ManagedMethods is you need to have a multi-layered cybersecurity approach. So we are not a proponent as a vendor, nor just a community of the citizen that there's a one end-all be-all product, and I think all of our panelists would agree. There is no magic wand that gets you that one unicorn product, if you would, that solves all. And so the graphic here that Katie's brought up on the screen depicts a very basic stack of technology security needs and areas you should be addressing and talking about on a daily basis in your organization. For all intents and purposes today with ManagedMethods, we play at the cloud and endpoint layers with our security with Cloud Monitor for cloud applications like Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, and all of the lovely components that go into the communication and collaboration of those suites, as well as out to the device layer, supporting Google Chrome browser on various types of appliances, devices, Chromebooks, PCs, Windows, etc. So these layers, though, when you look at all of them, all of our panelists, I'm sure would agree that they have at some point in time in their technology careers worked with each one of these layers, and then you have to address each one of these layers because they all serve unique and different areas of it. Now, in some cases, you will have some overlap, but we believe that it's important that when conducting audits of your organization, yes, you should start at the base layer. You should start with your infrastructure, your foundation, pen testing, access control, patch management if you're in certain environments. Then you move up the stack to the connectivity of the network, and then the access to the network with endpoints. And then arguably the newest layers that have come about in the last few years into the K-12 arena would be, things like two-factor authentication, single sign-on, and security now at the cloud layer as more and more schools operate daily at a cloud layer. So this is, where we're going to be talking about. This is to help kind of address that. Let's go ahead and jump forward there, Katie. So what is a cloud security audit from our perspective, and why is it that you should look for these types of things? So periodic inspections on a regular basis. So whether you're doing these things at minimum quarterly, maybe you have processes in place to look at these things monthly. If you have technology in place like ManagedMethods or similar types of technologies where there's more automation, you might be doing this on an ongoing daily basis. It never stops. These types of investigations, inspections, and audits can help you uncover potential problems that may put your district at risk. What are some of the things we might talk about? Well, data that's stored in your Google Workspace shared drive that is containing personally identifiable information of staff or students, or payroll information, or individual education plans that is inappropriately shared out of your domain to, organizations such as personal accounts. Maybe you have phishing emails that are lurking around in your drives. Maybe you have compromised accounts that you're unaware of, and you have logins coming from external locations, say outside of the United States. Maybe it's third-party applications that have been granted an OAuth token to your domain that have not been approved and vetted by your technology staff, which is the new landscape of shadow IT. A whole lot more you can also uncover, but these are just some of the main items that you may uncover by conducting these periodic investigations. And it's important for you to know these things in order to prepare any kind of emergency response types of plans, because if you don't know these things are happening, or you don't know necessarily where you have potential risks, it's a little bit difficult to then prepare for that recovery. So let's keep going, and we'll get to our panelists now. So what are some of the questions we're going to ask, and why is a risk audit important? Because first and foremost, you have to identify where you have gaps, where you have potential risks, so that you can prepare accordingly. And then that may be modifying current practices. Maybe things are good as they are, or maybe you don't even have a particular plan in place for some area because you maybe didn't realize there was as much risk that was exposing there. So it's important to, again, do that thorough housekeeping inventory, if you would, to determine what we're dealing with. And then from there, you can put your plans in place and address cloud security events as they occur with your response plan. So with that said, I'm excited because we've got three great technology leaders today representing really three different unique areas of the country. So I'm going to just ask our panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves. I'll start first with you, Kirstin.
Thanks, David. My name is Kirstin Collins. I'm the Director of Technology for Cedarburg School District. We're a public school district in the North Shore suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we have 5 schools, 3,100 students, and it's such a nonstop kind of topic that we're talking about, and everything involved with cybersecurity and incidents right now. We just had a conversation this morning with my network admin where it's, what did I used to do? What did we fill our time with? Because this is everything.
Well, it is as we started talking about just before we went live, it is a ever ongoing topic, and it's being talked about everywhere. Speaking of talking about it everywhere, I know the next panelist, Mr. Neal Richardson, you've talked about this very topic at COSIN. You've talked about it at CTO clinics. You talked about it with us. You've done this before. So go ahead, Neal, and introduce yourself and tell us your background.
All righty. So I'm Neal Richardson. I'm the CISO/Director of Technology for the Hillsborough Deering School District. We're up in New Hampshire. We are small by comparison to everybody else here. I've got 3 buildings, 1,100 students, 250 staff. The IT department is 2, me and one other guy. But incident response has been a thing for me And it used to, for me, goes all the way back to the early 2000s when I had that red binder that said, "Oh crap." But we'll get into details about that a little bit later. But yeah, that's where I'm from, and that's what I do.
Last but not least, let's go back out to the West Coast where it's, it's early, out there for you, right, Britton? So
nice and early. Just finished my coffee. So, but yeah, so I'm Britton Smith. I'm a director of IT here at Roseville Union School District in California. I'm out of Central California. We have 9 school sites. We're a K-8 district. We have about 6,100 students that we serve here, and I have I have a team of 7, and I just brought on a cybersecurity analyst this year because we started kind of digging into some of the cybersecurity items. So, well,
and that's perhaps a luxury too that the other 2 panelists might be a little envious of, because the fact that you can have somebody that's their sole lead responsibility is to focus on cybersecurity. So congrats on that. Well, it's nice because we have like I said, 3 unique parts of the country here with California, Wisconsin, New Hampshire. I don't know. Sounds like there could be a cheese debate happening. Wisconsin cheese, California cheese.
Debate.
Yeah.
No debate.
Sorry, Neal, Britton. Kirstin and I are going to be on the same page. I am a Wisconsin native, so I'm going to have to go with her on that. So we could always talk about craft beer or something else next, but we'll keep going down the list. Well, thank you, all 3 of you, for joining us today. We're super excited because at the end of the day, while I get to talk about this all the time, and our company is focused and specialized, this is all we do. It's more important to understand from your perspective and share your real world perspectives and stories with the folks that have joined our webinar today. And like I said, I just came back from a conference in Texas the last 2 days where I was doing this same format live in banquet rooms, ballrooms at a conference there, having similar conversations about it. So it's important we continue these conversations about cybersecurity. It's unfortunate that we have to talk about the idea of a response plan, which means, right, we've already had something happen, or at least you're preparing for it. But it is like doing the fire drill where you have to, I'm envisioning a scene from The Office, where they had the fire drill scene and Dwight was, he lit something on fire in a closet and had to have everybody leave the office. So hopefully we won't get all that panicked like they did in the episode of The Office. So let's go ahead and jump in and we'll go around. So being that we are in summer mode, I think all 3 of you now, your regular school years have ended. You might have some summer school happening. Usually it's project time, and hence perfect timing for this. Let's start out with you, Kirstin. What summer projects are on your list that you may be most excited about? I don't know if I want to say excited. Maybe you're thrilled about them, and what impact will you expect to have these projects will have on next year as it pertains to anything? It doesn't have to be cybersecurity, just any projects you have on your plate right now.
Yeah, as with anyone, this is our work time. It's hard to get everything done. We are finally getting our one of our larger buildings, our switch replacement, rip and replace all of it. This is a project that was last year's project, and because of supply chain issues, we are finally getting to get that done. We were supposed to do it over spring break, and our last few cables didn't have them rescheduled. We're probably 4th time rescheduling. So that's super exciting. New firewall, upgraded, future-proofing our internet at one location, and then doing some redundant fiber. And the least exciting, but I'll say most exciting, is we are executing new data privacy agreements with our vendors, which is just a lot of work. We have a new compliance attorney that we're working with, and just all that is really fun, quote, and have that ready for our teachers and everybody when they get back in the fall. So going through our web tools, those third-party tools, got to get those.
Gotta have it.
Got to get them approved. So
data privacy is of course utmost topic. First and foremost right now, it seems like all around the country. And of course, you said the word attorneys, so that always makes things even more exciting when you throw in the attorneys, right? Neal, I'll toss that question over to you. What exciting things are happening up in New Hampshire this summer?
So this summer, we actually don't have a whole lot of cybersecurity projects going on. But we decided because, we've got nothing better to do. We rip and replace our student information system, change our website, replace our copier fleet, and deploy about 200 laptops. So we
Just another in paradise.
just another day, it's what we're doing. But yeah, it's really that project stuff that really impacts that teaching and learning part of what we do to support, education. So it's all important work. It's just not as fun or sexy as cyber.
Britton, what's happening in SoCal? Well, you're not really fully. So, would you say you're SoCal? No, you're Central.
I say central. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Leave it to me to be geographically challenged with SoCal terminology.
Right. It's a big state. It's hard. We're like right there on the line between Southern and Central. So yeah. So some of the stuff that we're doing over here outside of just updating classroom technologies and stuff, such as like smart boards, TVs, iPads and such. We're moving over to a cloud phone system. So a cloud-based phone system, since we still have a long time before copper lines are extinct out here and no longer available for use. But I'm trying to be ahead of it and get us moved over to that cloud phone system and get all of our fax lines and stuff moved to e-fax, move away from the old school way of doing things. And then we move over to cybersecurity a little bit. That's another one that's pretty exciting that we're doing. We're doing some work with some SIEMs and some analyzers to see where traffic's coming in and out, to make sure that we're able to analyze that. We piloted quite a bit of technologies this past year to see who was able to catch what. It's amazing what you find when you start putting these things in place. You think you have all these things set and you're locked in and your vulnerabilities are limited. Then you start finding issues. So next year, I'm excited for that because next year we're going to start doing simulated attacks and such on our network and see where we can find additional issues. And lastly, one of the big things that's a big thing right now is physical security for students. And so we're creating a school that's a proof of concept where we'll have emergency notification, a lot of cameras to be able to identify issues that may happen, as well as some early warning notification lockdown technologies where we can lock down doors on an entire school site with the press of a button. So working through all those things. Those are all exciting.
Well, it certainly sounds like all of you have lots of things on the plate. And, I'll use the analogy that going through these types of processes is like doing a home remodel. You made the comment, Britton, where it's like, you think you got something in place, you think you got it planned out, and then the best laid plans go awry. It's like, well, wait a minute, we'd measured this, we got this, we picked this tile out, we already picked this stuff. And of course, this theme is near and dear to me, hence the plastic sheet wall behind my head here, as my home office is no longer, there used to be a wall there. So now there's, we're in the midst of, those are my summer projects too. So all sorts of rip and replace and change. Well, we're just going to stay with you, Britton, and we're going to, kind of just go back and forth with all three of you. So let's get into some of the details itself. So at a high level, how would you describe the current state of your incident response plan? That is assuming you have one in place. So, examples, you feel like you're early stage and it's something new that you guys have rolled out and developed? Because I know, Britton, in your case, you may be revamping or doing something different since you brought in a dedicated cybersecurity team lead. So let's go through all three of you. Give us the state of your current incident response plan. Where do you feel it is early stage? We've had it for a while, we got to revamp it, or we're pretty advanced and we just did X.
So I'd say where we are is we had a pretty solid, we thought we had a pretty solid plan, but now it's just ever changing, always evolving as we find new threats, as we find new vulnerabilities, as we run into new situations, or we feel like something's happening. We try to then just solidify what our response would look like. And like I said, we're going to do simulated responses. So once those happen, it will then continue to evolve to see what's working and what's not working.
Neal?
So I will not use the term advanced, because I don't believe it will get there ever. I don't, I don't buy it. Threats change too quickly. Anytime a human is involved in any process, it's going to have issues. And I guarantee that there's a configuration change you made once 5 or 6 years ago to fix a problem that you never went back and undid. But for me, it constant review. Always looking at what resources are available out there for me to, take advantage of as far as, free assessments and that sort of thing, because any bit of information is one more piece of knowledge I didn't have.
Good. Okay. Kirstin?
Yeah, so our response plan used to be basically, what do we do in a data exposure, a data breach? That was the extent of it. And it was driven a lot by board policy and administrative guidelines. And so we had that documented well, used it often because people. And really the incident response plan lived more with 3 people on my team, myself, my network admin, my IT systems guy. It's like, okay, that's our thing. And, we had a copy in the safe and we had our hard copy. And so we're really getting to the point now where it's like, no, this is a team. It's a bigger team, and really operationalizing it with our teams of people, getting our building administration involved. Here's what it would look like. It can happen, not it's when, but not if, but when, and so what is that going to do for us? And
Right.
So it's really more about transparency now, and that it exists, and how are we operationalizing? What does that look like? It's not a tech thing, it's everybody. So figuring out how to make that happen. And so, like you said, it's a work in progress, always updating. This year we started with a weekly meeting with my whole team, and we call it Cyber Chase. That's a PBS cartoon from whenever. And it's like, no, we meet for an hour and we just, all right, let's bring it up. Let's do a tabletop. Let's do whatever. And so it's different, but it's always evolving.
But it's a constant conversation.
Always.
And
Yep.
that is, the purpose of these webinar series, and why we as a company continue to have these discussions on and over again, is that unfortunately cybersecurity has to become now a mainstream conversation, not just headlines that people, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. It's, I think one of you already said it. It's not, if, it's when. Well, I'm going to stay with you, and you kind of, this is a good segue because you've alluded to that with your weekly meetings. What steps did you and your team take to get started with an incident response plan? And is there something you would recommend as a good first step for those maybe in our audience that haven't even addressed this yet?
Sure. Yeah. So use the resources you have that are available to us. There's so many free resources. So find a template. We actually have the CISA template, and then actually the K-12 6, and then some of, what's the other one called? I don't remember. Secure, they're out of Minnesota. And we've done a hybrid and say what works for us. Not too detailed, start small, at least get some things on the page, and being intentional like we were, and we just wrapped up today, our end of year, and just keep working at it. It's going to come together, and any time you give it is going to improve it.
I think you're thinking of Security Studio, Ryan and his team.
Yes, Security Studio. Yes. Thank you.
Well, you mentioned, and again, we are a tight-knit community in K-12 education, and you mentioned some resources that I know that Neal's certainly shaking his head. He knows very well. Neal presented at the inaugural K-12 6 conference that was held this past spring, spring down in Austin. I think it felt like winter in Austin, right, at that time. Yeah. So thank you for starting it out by sharing right away what we all want to make sure we know of, is that is the 3 of you and all of your peers that are here attending this webinar. Somebody knows, somebody has good ideas, somebody's been through this before. And that's the beauty of I spent 25 years working in the commercial world, selling predominantly to Fortune 500 companies. A little bit different. It's not quite as birds of a feather. And that's the beauty of this. At least you have some support people around you that have either gone through this or they're in the same position, like, help, what do we do? Neal, since I mentioned your name, I'm going to come back to you. So on that, yeah, Neal, I know you've gone through this a lot. You've led these discussions in the state of New Hampshire and on a national level through your work with COSIN. So, and I know that, like the CIS framework, and that is, obviously even near and dear to you. So why don't you walk us through where it was where you were, how did you get this started? And because you have such a huge team, you and your shadow and your other friend. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So when I came into the district, they had nothing. In fact, it was to the level where they had fired the entire previous IT department. There was no documentation left, and it was just two of us to figure this out beginning to end. That's where we came from. So, I sent him on the path of you document the network, figure out what's connected to what and where. And then I started, all right, well, something's going to break. I don't know what it's going to be, but it will break. What are the key components that we need to remain functional? Right. And then start at the top of the stack. Who's my ISP? What are they connected to? What's their response time for an issue? And then, sort of scope it out from there. Your internal servers, what's providing what services to who? So when something happens, you can at least follow that chain back to what was impacted and how can I work around that issue? Because really, you're looking just to, contain the issue at first. But if you can provide operationally access to the others around you at the same time, it's better for the entire organization, right? So sort of trying to put walls up around the impacted segment and, work around that. But we also looked at our emergency response plan because the state mandates the district has to have an emergency response plan. So then we're working with police and fire and saying, all right, well, what services are you dependent on from us? Like if you have an incident, what do you need from IT? And then I flipped it over. Say IT has an issue, who on the law enforcement side can I reach out to locally before I start my escalation chain through my insurance provider and the federal resources? So it was, having those communications and conversations about, we know it's going to be bad. We know something will break, and trying to anticipate those breakpoints.
Okay. Start with the basics and just start building it up.
Yep.
And that kind of, as you talked about, and I alluded to this in the beginning when we talk about our beliefs in audits and our approaches. Sometimes you have to start with a basic housekeeping inventory. What do we have? What are we dealing with? Where are things plugged in? Where are doors? Where's access points? It sometimes is start with basics. And clearly, Neal, thanks for sharing that. It sounds like you guys might have worn out some, walking shoes or running shoes, going from building to building to building, looking for all that. Yeah, one of my first jobs in IT, we jokingly called them sneaker nets, where hope you have a good pair of running shoes because you're going to be going from server to server installing this. So that was always the fun part. Back when it was, the DAT tapes, 8mm and 4mm tapes, you had to go put them in there. Yep. Fun stuff. Speaking of fun stuff, so Britton, on that same line then, what was your, what was your process? And is it perhaps now starting over again with a new team member?
So, our process started with, I started out here as a site tech. We had nothing in place, kind of like Neal. Honestly, what was the catalyst that got us started? We got hit with crypto on one of our servers. And it was bad. A couple of nights of no sleep, and trying to reconfigure some things makes you want to put some things in place. So we started with action steps and how we can mitigate if we were in an active attack, and then it evolved into preventative steps. And then when it comes to actual just creating an action plan, to be able to kind of to address anything, we just did kind of what Neal did, where we were able to identify our assets, what we had on the network, how everything ran. We rolled into segmentation. And then with that, if we were ever to get hit again, we have our action steps, who's responsible, and then who do we call and when, kind of deal. So.
Okay. So basics and bare bones and getting it going. Sounds like that could be a theme across the board and where to start with it. So let's stay with you, Britton. We'll work our way back again. When you were doing this, did you use a template? Was there a resource? And this can be a short answer for all of you, because I think some of you might have already alluded to this, but was there a template you used, whether it was from a vendor, from an organization like MSISAC or the CIS control framework, whatever it were? Did you have a starting point with them?
So now we have a formal template that we use, but before it was literally a list. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is what you do. This happens. These are the steps we follow. With an actual template, then we're moving on to actual actual sections. These are your resources. This is who you have. These are action steps. And so now they're on template. So before we initially started, it was literally just a waterfall list.
I'm going to pause real quick. Was there an audio disruption or was it just me? Okay. Britton, do me a favor. Mute and unmute again.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Uh-oh. Again, some distortion. Mute for a second, and then I'll have Neal unmute yours and say something real quick.
Audio check.
Okay. So, Britton, you might be having a little bit of an audio issue there. If you need to leave the meeting and come back in, we'll see if that works. Otherwise, I'll come back to you and we'll see if it's gone away. Because what you just said that last time, we was a little bit fuzzy there. Sorry, don't mean to call you out on the spot, Britton. Let me jump over to you, Kirstin, in terms of, was there I know you mentioned various resources when we talked about this a few minutes ago. Was there a set template, though, that you folks either brought in from a vendor or an organization, maybe the state of Wisconsin, Weddell, somebody has something like that?
Yeah, we're actually using the K-12-6 template and then just modifying it and adding in some things from the security source, kind of customizing that a bit and figuring out, what works for us in our environment.
Okay. And for those of you that are not familiar with the K-12-6, Doug Levin and his organization, great organization. Neal, I know, of course, you've been involved with them and had a hand in that as well. So, Neal, in terms of template.
So I steal from everybody is the simple answer. I've used a K-12-6 template. I've used CIS's templates that have started to come out now. MSISAC, you could reach out to them. They'd give you a template. Our state level insurance company also has a template. So I've worked with that as well. And it's sort of taken bits and pieces of all of them and merging them down to getting into something that's usable for you. Because at the end of the day, it's your organization that needs to use it. It nobody else's. So they're all good starting points, but you need to customize it down to fit what you're trying to do in your environment.
So it's a blend. There's no perfect answer for it. And I think you probably have, you've all kind of shared that. And Neal, I like your take on this. And that is borrow from everyone, because it goes back to, Kirstin, what you started by saying first. There's so many great resources out there for this. So just out of curiosity, before we go to our next question, I thought I would just ask our audience and our panelists, or excuse me, the audience out there, what's the take on, do you have one in place? And look at the topic right now. We're looking at about a 50-50 split. The no horse is starting to take the lead in this race, 53%. So we'll leave that up for a few minutes, let people join in if you have an incident response plan or not. So Britton, we're going to test your capabilities there with audio. If not, you're going to have to type all your answers in the chat, Britton. Come on. So let's come back over to you, Britton. So can you share maybe a time where you've had to use your incident response plan? And you mentioned earlier the crypto thing, but it sounds like you didn't have one in place at that time, or maybe what you did have in place was rather lackluster. But for all of you, and I'll start with Britton, can you share a time when you've had to use your IR plan and what went well and what needed improvement? And did you determine, was there something completely eye-opening when that happened?
Yeah, so can you guys hear me better now?
Yes, look at that audio. Way to go.
There we go. All right, so yeah, we've had to use it in the past. The earliest point where we had to use it was for during COVID. We had, as people were coming back, and right as COVID hit, we had just deployed our first endpoint protection solution out to everyone, and of course we missed one. So luckily we had our network segmented. We were able to go through our action plan and be able to mitigate the damage because it was crypto again, and we were able to mitigate the damage. And identify the user, and we didn't have to go too far down our action plan. We were just like, we were able to recover everything, and everything worked well. And then we made some changes to how we operated. It worked well, so then we just changed things on how we operated on the back end to make sure it didn't happen again.
Okay. Kirstin?
Luckily, we really haven't had to test our plan. I would say we've tested a light version where we've had some email phishing and kind of pre-texting things going on at times, and not necessarily full plan. But what we do is actually tabletops every other time we meet weekly with our tech staff. It's like, okay, let's pull one of these tabletops and pretend it happened. And what does that look like? So no, we haven't had to really.
Okay. Yeah, and that's probably a good thing, knock on wood. Now, make sure
I don't want to say that because
this is being recorded. Kirstin, you did say this live. We'll come back and revisit that. So let's not go there. So let's move into more of, big brother, big sister now, giving that advice. What advice will you have for other districts out there, members of our audience, people that might be watching this recording later? Advice you have for them to include, what things would you say when you do an incident response plan, make sure you include these things, or you at bare minimum look at this resource or this template or something. And we'll stay with you, Kirstin, since you've got the microphone still.
Sure.
Virtually.
So what we've really focused on, and I'd say you want to do, is identify those people, and who are the people that you'll have on your team that are outside of your team. So every vendor that you have documented, make sure you have those numbers at your fingertips. And then another thing that we've done is identified people outside of our department who are tech savvy, but not tech staff. And you might need to put those people into play. We have 5 buildings. We're not that big, but at times you might have to go out to a building. You might have things to do. The other thing that we've done in our plan is make sure we have multiple people for each role. And so depending who is doing what, we have multiple people to do. And then I am not pegged into anything, just so I can't be dependent on to be doing something when I might need to be doing something else. So just kind of that people part, figuring out how that all work.
Got it. Okay. Neal, advice you would say, like, hey, when you go to do this, 100% I recommend you should at least look at these things. And oh, by the way, I think you should be sure to address this. So
like Kirstin, people, and go deep. It's hard for smaller districts where, your entire staff is 250 people to have that backup. But you need to identify those. You need to identify the people and who's going to fill that role when they're not available. And like Kirstin, I am not called out specifically in that plan at all, operating under the assumption that I will either be gone or unavailable at the time something touches off. It will add strength to your plan, but list of phone numbers of who to call in the middle of the night, right? Your superintendent will want to know, but that probably shouldn't be your first call, right? You want to be reaching out, at off hours to your insurance company if you have it. If not, MSISAC or CISA. Like, who are you calling? Because you're going to be overwhelmed and you're not going to have the resources. So just sort of that pre-planning of what can I bring to bear when it goes bad.
Ghostbusters, I would call Ghostbusters first. Yes. Next it would probably be the Avengers. Then from there, maybe the superintendent. And then I'd be updating my resume. But that's just my personal take. So Britton, we'll come over to you now. Advice.
I agree with both Neal and Kirstin. I'd say people. Your people have to know what to do. They have to know who to call, and where to go. I mean, the times that we've had to put any of our action plans in place, it's, hey, this is what's happening. Everybody knows what their job is. Everybody knows who's going and grabbing those laptops, who's going and starting to do analysis on the network to figure out what's happening and where it's happening. for example, we've had to use our incident response plan as we started we were working with vendors on these on the SIMs and the log aggregators and everything that we're trying to identify issues before they're happening. And us identifying an issue and saying, okay, this is happening, you go on site, this is what's happening. And that person runs out, they know exactly what to do, they know what to bring it back, who to report to, and what the next steps are. So people are going to be your number one. Your superintendent, like Neal was saying, should be probably on the last of your list. You don't want to go to your superintendent while you're panicked and be like, I don't know what's happening, but we got to do something. You want to make sure that you have it lined out and that you have it under control by the time you bring it to them.
Okay. I would agree. I'm going to stick with all of you folks because our best resource is still all of us and your team members, and you can't do it alone. And hopefully for all of you, and even Neal, you've at least got one other person on your staff, and for our members of our audience, hopefully you've got those resources available to you. I threw out another poll that's going right now. Of course, our last poll, the results came in where it was almost 50-50, but it looked like it was about 53% of the folks in our webinar today said no, they don't have an IR plan in place. And now asking, just curious, like does people have projects in place? And yes, overwhelmingly we're seeing that yes, this summer we've got cybersecurity projects on the docket. A lot of folks that are saying no, but in the upcoming year we do. So the nice thing is that only 2 respondents have said no, we don't have anything on on the agenda for cybersecurity. So I think that's kudos to those folks. That means they probably got it taken care of. But so I'm going to shift gears a little bit because Managed Methods, that's who we are. We're involved in this. Britton, I'll stay with you and then we'll come back around. Where did Managed Methods and what we provide you, the visibility and control we have, and as we think back to that stack earlier, because we are arguably at the newest layer of having to be addressed, where do you see us either had to utilize us in some sort of IR type of situation, or where do you see us as a part of that bigger picture?
So I'd say, well, with us, we started with Managed Methods, like in the process of going into cybersecurity, probably our second thing that we put in place. We did our endpoint and then we did cloud because we were like, we don't know what's going on out there in the world. So that's helped us out a lot. So I mean, the way that we use them or we have used them is we've had phishing attacks. We've had some of our staff get hit with a phishing attack, and we were able to pull those emails back, remove them out with a click of a button. We were able to see who maybe had something still sitting on their drive, and then we were able to do further investigation and notify the organization where that phishing email originated from, because it's typically another organization that was compromised that's sending you that stuff. So it's helped us out a lot in that way. And then also it's helped us, I know that anyone that's on G Suite, you have limited drive space. So one of the things that's helped us out a lot is with copyright issues or movies, students sharing items within Google Drive and us being able to identify those things, as well as just being able to manage the apps that have access to those student accounts. Even if you put down your locks in Gmail, we thought we had all our locks put in place, but some stuff was still squeaking through the cracks, and we were able to put in automated pieces within Managed Methods to say, hey, if this happens, do this. So, and it helps. It's taken the workload off of us a lot as well.
Well, I think you've alluded to almost what I call some of the daily incident response. I mean, there's your overall incident response plans for when the major disaster happens, the tornado, the hurricane, the cyber attack, whatever it may occur, and then you have your almost daily, weekly, ongoing incident response. And that's why I kind of preface this, and before I jump to you, Kirstin, in that at the beginning, we see this as a part of the overall, you have to audit and understand what's there first. Neal, you talked about it where you literally went around the building to see where were things plugged in and what's connected and what's in our world. So knowing is half that battle. We got to know, you can't control what you don't know exists. So you got to go with that first. Kirstin.
Yeah, so doing that cloud audit and have that real-time kind of data piece for us is really important. And it's just like you said, one layer of what we have going on, DLP, and just making sure all those pieces are tight, and those third-party apps, that's not something we can do without you guys. It's just not feasible. And that's actually when we first did our first security audit back in 2016, it was like, oh crap, what do we do about the cloud? It was like, okay, we have our on-premise, we have other things, we have our SIS. Okay, we're doing all those audits different places, but that's a big piece of our puzzle.
Mr. Richardson.
So I had a comfort level with the filtering software that we were using on the Chromebook. So I was comfortable with that product. I knew it in and out. But what I didn't know was what was happening on the cloud, what was going on out there. I knew it was a problem, but I didn't have the visibility. And at that time, it was been 5 years now. Google's hadn't matured to that level to give any of that visibility. It was like, yeah, we detected a post-delivery phishing email. Well, thanks. But what about my apps? What about, the drives? What about all of that other stuff that makes up what the kids are really doing? It's awesome. I use it daily. My favorite feature is the geo blocking, because if I can block those outside countries, I've reduced my risk footprint out of the gate. And that gives us more time to focus on, the copyright infringement and the drive sharing and the third-party apps.
Having another helper, another hand.
Absolutely.
Perhaps that's
That doesn't get tired or ask for a day off.
That's true. Our support team, they're always there. They're always out there helping the team. So, all right. So we're as I look at the clock, I want to throw it out to the audience. I know I've thrown some polls out there, and I want to jump into QA, and then we'll have final thoughts from everyone, and then we'll get everyone going on this Friday afternoon. But before I jump into the Q&A and final thoughts, I'll start with our three panelists. Of course, if you had to choose one of the Avengers to be on your staff for cybersecurity, who do you think would be the best one? Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, or Black Widow? Neal, who do you think would be first?
I'm going to say Thor.
You're going with Thor. Okay.
I'm going with Thor.
The God of Thunder. All right.
That's
Britton,
right.
who do you think?
I'd have to go Iron Man. I mean, he has all the tech on him, so
He's got all the tech. Tony Stark's got all the tech. Kirsten?
You can guess. It's Black Widow.
Yeah. Because she has all the KGB helpers. Wait, they're well, I can't say it. Never mind. And clearly the audience out there agrees that having all of these Tony Stark technology would be good. Nobody went for, Neal, nobody went for Thor.
Sorry.
Nobody went for Thor for sure. Anyways, well, I had to liven it up a little bit there. You can tell what I did on my 2.5-hour flight back from Texas. I was flipping through the free movies on Southwest Airlines there, and I've seen every Avenger movie probably 20 times. I thought, gee, let's watch one again. Okay, well, let's see what we got from the audience. Feel free, folks, having a little fun here on a Friday afternoon with the Avengers. But in all seriousness, if you have any questions for our panelists, please throw them out there into the Q&A. I see one question that's already come up. What SIM is everyone using out there? That's kind of a broad-reaching, question, but again, security incident event management. The acronym, if you're not familiar with what a SIM, whatever it may be. So perhaps Splunk, Arctic Wolf, Logarithm, QRadar, you name it. There's lots of them out there these days. Homegrown. So that was one question that came from the audience. For our panelists, do any of you at your district have a SIM tool in place?
Yeah, we're using FortiSIM, so that's what.
So you got from Fortinet.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
It's an ask right now in our district. We've gone to we put an RFP out to look and just trying to figure out what's affordable and what's manageable. So we're still, it's on the ask, and that would be one thing that was advice given to me was you don't want to be in an incident and say, oh, if you haven't asked, Like, well, the question will be, why didn't you ask us for that? You know, and so ask. There's
Yeah.
something you need. And so that's where we're at. It's like, we need one. So we're asking.
Fair enough. Good. That's a good response. I like that. I agree. Neal?
We're not doing anything as far as a simmer seam is concerned,
Got it.
currently. And that's a resource allocation level. Like, I'm sure I could get the funding for it, but now I got to commit a resource to do something with the data that it generates. And we're not there yet. We're just simply not there yet.
Yep. I think we can all understand that. You know, there's only so many hours of the day and so many resources available to us with staff members, team members. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see if I'm seeing any questions coming from the panel. I see some hands that have been raised. Let's see. Oh, another one's bumping into the chat here. Okay. Have you dealt with phishing email training and teachers unions? Oh, here we go. Okay. Britton, you're nodding your head there, so I'm going to let you you jump on that first.
So yeah, so I mean, there are some good templates out there for what you can use for teacher unions, and but what I've heard is mostly it's a cultural thing. We do not currently do that. Most of our training is when we have, or if we get a phishing attack, and most of our teachers, it's worked well for us. Most of our teachers understand that if you weren't expecting something, or if it looks funny, always look at who's coming from, and we get reports all the time from teachers about phishing emails. But we also use ManagedMethods as our way to kind of get around the training issue. Yes, and so that helps out a lot, so we can monitor. But also just building that culture. I don't necessarily feel that you need a training platform. While it's good, it can also cause issues. So, but yes, there's a lot of, it's from what I've heard, people that have had it successfully implemented. It's been a negotiating item when those people go to the table.
Kirstin or Neal, do either one of you have a take on that topic?
Yeah, so in this last year, we've moved forward with InfoSec for phishing simulations and teacher training. We have weekly campaigns. We might have 2 or 3 a month that we do with the phishing simulations, and it's truly amazing. So like the reporting now that we have, so I think it's been a great thing. I don't have any experience with teachers unions, as in Wisconsin, don't have that issue right now. And the training piece has been good. We're not holding teachers accountable. So the training we assign, I think it's 1 or 2 videos a month, and we get metrics on who's watched them. You know, we get someone who's phished and you're like, oh, have they done their training? Oh, have they reported any of the phishing simulations? And we'll reach out to their administrator or whatever. But moving forward, our superintendent is super supportive, and he's like, nope, this is what we're going to do. We need to now hold them accountable, because the last thing you want to be is the person who clicked on, gave information. Now there's access to your network, and now we have ransomware. It's like, really?
But and that's a crucial piece, is the, you know, having IT and administration aligned and in agreement that what we need to do, this is how we're going to do it. So
yeah.
Neal, thoughts on this matter?
Yeah. So my thoughts probably a little bit different. We do not do phishing training. And it's not because of a union issue. It is simply the fact that the administration will not terminate based on the results or an end user clicking on something. They don't believe that it was the end user's responsibility. That's IT's responsibility. I also believe that phishing training is effective short term, but to continue that process over and over and over for an extended period of time, you lose all effectiveness. They just get saturated with it. And it's not as effective as it can be.
They almost become numb, if you would.
Yep.
Yeah. So another question that's come out from our audience, and we still got a few minutes. Thanks. Keep bringing the questions, folks. Daniel says, have you had pushback from faculty, staff regarding apps on personal devices. Example, I'm thinking about when we pushed the Duo out to our group, the surprising amount of people that fought having Duo app on their phone. Very good question, Daniel. All right, Neal, we'll stay with you since you just had the virtual microphone.
So my approach is probably a little bit different. It's my email. I'm responsible. If you want to access my email, you'll do what I tell you to do, how to access it in the way that I need you to. I won't push anything out onto their device, but that means they may not be able to gain access to their email from their device. It's their call.
Folks, you know why Neal chose Thor. You just saw Neal throw down the hammer. So thank you. Wow, just, definitive right there. There we go. I don't know who wants to follow that one up. Kirstin, do you want to take that?
Sure. I guess I'm a little softer. So we have 3 options. It's like, here's your options. And when you give someone a fob and, oh yeah, you got to have that, and they realize, oh, it'd be sure a lot easier on my phone. We've had a lot of people move to putting the app on their phone. We say, no, that's okay, you can. But with the fob, we actually have a $50 kind of replacement fee. So if you don't turn it in, you lose it, whatever. They're expensive. So it's like, oh gosh, I don't want that responsibility. I'll just put it on my phone. So there is pushback, but we have other options. They can call their desk phone. Well, that's not really convenient when you're somewhere else. But
now we know why you chose the Black Widow, because the Black Widow, she kind of was more gentle, lulled people to sleep, and then she put the hammer down. So, okay, there you go. Britton, how does it work at Rosedale?
So at Rosedale, we do a little bit more of a targeted approach. We do our users that have access to high level information or server access. So we target them. Mostly they understand the need. They don't want their stuff lost. They don't want their stuff encrypted. So there was no real pushback with that. And a lot of them are not union members, so it makes it a little bit easier. But when it comes to teachers and other staff, there's no plan to put any kind of MFA on their accounts. What we are going to do is, or what we have done is, since we've been encrypted in the past, is we just microsegmented everyone out through via VLANs, and we put in ACLs to where they aren't able to go. It'd make it very difficult, not to say that it can't happen, but it'd make it very difficult for them to span VLANs and access resources without the right credentials. We honestly we manage our teacher and staff VLANs as if they were almost guests, outside of a couple of extra privileges such as accessing printers and such. And we have all storage in the cloud, so that's not sensitive data, and so that all lives out there. So everything's web based. So that's how we attack that.
And of course, you all know ManagedMethods take on third-party apps. A subject that is very near and dear to us, which has arguably become one of the more powerful features that people use in our platform on a daily basis, is looking at third-party apps that have an OAuth token granted to your Google Workspace or your Microsoft 365 environment, regardless of where it is. And it goes back to what you said, Neal. We don't care if it's on somebody's personal device or a school-issued device or some random device, grandma and grandpa's next door neighbors. If they use their school-issued credentials to access an application, we're gonna help you analyze and detect and determine what risk level does that present to the district, from its permissions and scopes to the nature of the app, the content of the app, because at the end of the day, it's sometimes been the wild, wild west. And what apps are out there, who's using what, and wait a minute, why can't I install BetMGM? Well, you can install BetMGM or whatever gambling app you want for sports betting or fantasy. Just use your personal email address and whatnot. So that's certainly, and as you all 3 of you know, it can get worse than that. BetMGM is pretty harmless compared to what stuff we see on a daily basis. Folks, we're reaching the top of the hour, so I don't think there's any more questions coming in from the audience, and I want to give everyone their days back. I just want to go around the room. Final thoughts. Kirstin, we'll start with you, and then we'll go Neal and Britton, and we'll bid everyone farewell.
yeah, I asked my staff, is there anything you would tell people? And one person said, print your plan. off-network printer. How are you have an off-network printer so you make copies so everybody can have one. Print your plan. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
That's a good point. Yeah, you all of a sudden realize, wait a minute, the system's down and I can't access my drive. Or
right. Manage print is like, ooh, yeah, darn. So
good point. Okay, good point. Neal?
If you don't have a plan now, take a minute, grab a partner and just say, if we get ransomware right now, what's our first next step? And just do that. Just do it piecemeal, one issue at a time, and work through it.
Okay, start with the basics. I like that. Britton?
Yeah, mine would be the same as Neal's, just kind of start somewhere. Put a scenario, throw it up to your team and get ideas. See what everyone thinks should be happening, and then assign as needed. So when things hit the fan, you're ready to go and you know exactly what you're supposed to do.
Got it. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, all three of you, for taking an hour 15 or so out of your day today to share your experience and expertise, provide some guidance to members of our audience out there. Thank you to the audience members who have asked some very good questions. As you see the screen that's up there now, if you're interested in learning more about ManagedMethods or taking advantage of our complimentary Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace or both audit, our audit is going to give you visibility into what exists there. What's happening, what is being stored, what is being shared, received, uploaded, downloaded, who's doing what, when, where, and why. Is it putting our district at risk? Is it inappropriate material? Is it something that violates our technology acceptable use policy? The list goes on and on and on. And I know that obviously all three of you are big proponents of this because you went through that experience and saw value in it and then became customers of ManagedMethods. But we offer it up complimentary to anyone out there. I'm sure that all three of our panelists, if there's questions that come from our audience beyond here and there, their information is publicly available on their school district's website. You can reach out to Britton in Rosedale and Kirstin in Wisconsin at Cedarburg and Neal at Hillsborough Deering. And we now know, again, why we chose all of our Avenger heroes. They matched it up very nicely. So Britton just plugged a USB drive in somewhere and he's got this information now. So doing the Tony Stark thing. Kirstin, Neal, Britton, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to all of our audience members for joining today's webinar, and happy Friday. Happy first full day of summer as well.